Thank you very much, Irene, Israel, for welcoming me and colleagues in the room. Yes. Just a little story about this presentation. So first version, according to Irene, was way too big. I had to shrink it. Then I asked for some figures from the European Medicines Agency, and they have provided the figures, but asked for a copy of the presentation, which they commented, which I counter-commented. So now what you have here is the version you saw from the title of the file is reviewed by the EMA. It doesn't say approved by the EMA. So we left it there. Okay. So we have a lot of laws in Europe about pharmacovigilance, and they mostly apply to the pharmaceutical industry and to the regulators in the health system. We have these directives and regulations, we have good vigilance practice modules, and then there is regulatory guidance, a lot of it with respect to medication errors. So here is where I would refer you to the backup slides which are behind the presentation. I don't know if you distribute them to participants or not, but yes, you can contact Irene or me and I can send the full presentation to you. So these guidance documents that we have are a big step forward from what we had before until 1999. And they are practical, concise, and clarifying definitions. You have seen this definition from my previous speaker, the European definition of what is a medication error. And now let's talk about EudraVigilance, which is what I'm doing for the last 15 years, teaching it. And it's a system for managing and analyzing information on suspected adverse reactions to medicines authorized or studied in clinical trials in the European Economic Area. And this is maintained by the European Medicines Agency on behalf of the European Union, Medicines Regulatory Network, and as you probably heard, they moved in Amsterdam since March of this year, and it's a little bit crazy for them, having lost some 20% of the staff and so on. So they are doing their best to keep the boat afloat. So we have this Good Vigilance Practice Module 6, which is the largest of the pharmacovigilance good practice modules, which essentially gives instructions about how to collect, record, and report adverse drug reactions into this system, which is EudraVigilance. And I have asked one of the questions at the EMA, how many cases of reported adverse reaction with medication errors are in EudraVigilance? And they have provided me with this answer, about 208,000 cases, but they have not looked only for the simple word medication error. There is a thesaurus that they are using, which combines different terminologies that can be connected to a medication error. So it's not just looking for the term medication error and counting it. And they have also released an annual report for the last year. And you can see how the trend is going in pharmacovigilance. Reporting adverse reactions, there were more than 2 million case safety reports received in EudraVigilance only last year. So EudraVigilance started in December 2001, and pretty much by 2005 it became mandatory. And if you consider 14 years, 15 years, we have a total of nearly 15 million adverse drug reaction cases in this database, including those associated with medication errors. And from those 15, 2 million only last year. So the trend is really going up. So this data from EudraVigilance is used to monitor the safety of medicines in the EA and of course take regulatory action to prevent these adverse drug reactions and also medication errors. And there are several pieces of software used for this purpose. There is something called EudraVigilance Data Analysis System, or EVIDAS, of which there are two versions, one for regulators, which is very complex, and one for the pharmaceutical industry, for marketing authorization holders, which is rather limited. And then there is EVWeb. It's a software which allows pharmaceutical industry and regulators to report adverse reactions, but also to consult the contents of the EudraVigilance database. And then there is a website which is quite interesting, which is called adrreports.eu, to which any one of you can access without any registration or usernames and passwords. And you have there quite interesting information. So this EVIDAS is providing statistical calculations of reporting disproportionality for an active substance. It's called, the method they are using currently is called odds reporting ratio, or ROR. And this signal detection algorithm is not just a calculation, a statistical calculation. It takes into account also the total number of cases, because when there are small number of cases, statistics of disproportionality ring a false alarm bell, if you wish. And then also their medical relevance, just in terms of prioritizing the actions with respect to the findings in EVIDAS. So the EMA maintains a list of what they call important medical events and designated medical events, which kind of focus on the seriousness of adverse drug reactions. And their calculation, their signal detection algorithm actually is trying to find out in this large database whether a medicine generates more reports proportionally than another. In this case, there is a scrutiny that needs to be applied and eventually regulatory action taken. So this is what you find from the ADIreports.eu portal, anonymized information according to the EMA's data access policy. So you will not see patient details and things like that. And you have principally data presented as tables and graphs, but also as line listing. So you can search for medicines by name, by substance, and you can do a lot of parameters. You can look for serious cases or not, from Europe, from outside, reported by healthcare professionals or by patients. You can look by age groups, you can see pediatric information, geriatric information, and then you can look by different types of reactions. And then also you can look by the date when this kind of information was reported. So the second question I asked the EMA, and it took them 2 weeks to come up with this screenshot, was the top 10 substances with reported medication errors in EudraVigilance. And you can see there that pretty much a lot of them are injectable products, where maybe dosage information is unclear. And then the classical paracetamol and aspirin that we have, because they are quite heavily used. And you can see also the number of cases. So this comes from a database where there are nearly 200,000 medicines reported. So these are the top 10 culprits with medication errors. So for industry and for regulatory authorities, there are some limitations to what they can do in pharmacovigilance, especially the fact that in this database which I have presented you, medication errors where there is no adverse drug reaction associated are not there, because the regulation doesn't want people to report those to EudraVigilance. However, they need to be collected and recorded and analyzed by pharmaceutical industry and companies. Then we have also this notion of underreporting by patient and healthcare providers in particular, that are not very keen to report such things because they are afraid of being accused of malpractice. And then these reports go in electronically, where there are some codes on the terminology. So if you're not trained well, you use the wrong codes, and therefore even if the case is in the EudraVigilance database, you will not find it easily. And then we have the software limitations. For the industry version, it's very limited. So for example, if I wanted to look for the drugs which generate medication errors, I couldn't have done it. This is why I asked the EMA. So you can actually look for a substance, all the reported adverse drug reactions, but you cannot look for one kind of reported adverse drug reaction, which are all the drugs which are giving it. So this is one of the limitations that the industry has in terms of proactively looking for them and taking action. So in conclusion, the EMA guidance on medication errors is extremely useful for regulator and marketing authorization holders, pharmaceutical companies, and also to some extent to healthcare professionals who care to read this guidance. It's not easy to find time in your healthcare professional practice to go and look on the EMA website and download these big documents, but I think they are a useful source of information. And EudraVigilance is indeed a valuable tool assisting in the assessment of medication errors, with the limitation it currently has. So I thank you for your attention. I hope I did not go over my allocated time slot. Thank you.